Here's something that's going to mess with your head. Right now, while you're watching this video, there are two versions of you living completely different lives. There's the version of you at 40 who's financially stressed, drowning in debt, and wondering where the hell the last 2 decades went. And then there's the version who's sitting pretty with options, freedom, and enough money in the bank to sleep soundly at night. The difference between these two versions isn't luck, inheritance, or some secret investment strategy. It's 9 specific financial decisions you make in the next few years. My name is Nick, and I've spent way too much time obsessing over the invisible financial tripwires that separate those who thrive in their 40s from those who barely survive. If you're someone who looks at your bank account and wonders if you're on track for anything resembling financial success, or if you've ever laid awake at night calculating whether you'll still be working at 70, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Because today, we're not talking about get-rich-quick schemes or crypto moonshots. We're talking about the brutal math of what it actually takes to reach 40 without your finances being a complete disaster. Here's the thing about turning 40 that nobody warns you about. It's not just another birthday, it's the financial equivalent of halftime in a football game. If you've been coasting through your 20s and 30s thinking you have unlimited time to figure this stuff out, 40 is when reality comes knocking with a sledgehammer. Suddenly, you're not just responsible for yourself anymore. You've got kids who need orthodontics, parents who are getting older and might need help, and a career that demands more from you while your body starts sending subtle reminders that you're not 25 anymore. The average life expectancy hovers around 80 years, which makes 40 the mathematical midpoint of your existence. Everything you do financially before this milestone creates ripple effects that determine whether the second half of your life is spent in freedom or financial prison. Most people stumble into their 40s with a collection of random financial decisions held together by hope and monthly payments. But the people who actually win this game follow a specific blueprint. Let me paint you a picture of what financial disaster at 40 looks like, because I guarantee you know someone living this reality. They're making decent money, maybe 60 or 70,000 a year, but they're somehow always broke. They've got credit card debt that never seems to shrink, a car payment that feels like a mortgage, and a mortgage that feels like a life sentence. They buy lottery tickets not because they think they'll win, but because they literally can't imagine any other path to financial freedom. They avoid opening their credit card statements and panic every time their car makes a weird noise because a repair bill could derail their entire month. Now picture the opposite scenario. Someone who hit 40 with their financial house in order, they sleep well at night because they know exactly where their money is going. When their kid needs braces or their parent needs help, it's an inconvenience, not a crisis. They have options. They can take a lower paying job they actually enjoy because they're not trapped by debt. They can weather economic storms because they built their financial fortress during the sunny years. This isn't fantasy. This is the natural result of following a specific roadmap. The 9 goals I'm about to break down aren't suggestions or nice-to-haves. They're the minimum viable financial foundation for anyone who wants to reach 40 without their money being a constant source of stress. Some of these might seem obvious, others might challenge everything you think you know about personal finance, but here's what I can promise you. Ignore these at your own peril. Let's start with the foundation, because everything else we're going to talk about is built on this first goal. You need to define your ideal financial lifestyle. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this sounds like some touchy-feely self-help nonsense, hear me out. Most people spend their entire lives chasing a financial target they never actually defined. They just assume more money equals more happiness, so they hustle harder, spend more, and wonder why they're still stressed. Your 20s and 30s are supposed to be your experimentation phase. You try different jobs, different cities, different ways of spending money. You buy the expensive car because you think you're a car person. You blow money on clothes because you think fashion matters. You eat out constantly because cooking feels like work, and that's fine. But at some point, You need to graduate from random spending to intentional living. Here's the brutal truth about lifestyle creep. Every time you upgrade something in your life, your brain adapts to that new normal within about 3 months. The luxury apartment that made you feel successful when you signed the lease becomes just your apartment. The car that made you feel like you'd made it becomes just your transportation. Meanwhile, your expenses have permanently increased, but the happiness boost was temporary. You're on a treadmill, running faster and faster, but never actually getting anywhere. Defining your ideal financial lifestyle means figuring out what actually brings you joy versus what you think should bring you joy. Maybe you discover that having a nice backyard for entertaining friends matters more to you than driving a luxury car. Maybe you realize that travel experiences make you happier than expensive gadgets. Maybe you figure out that having the flexibility to work part-time is worth more than any material possession. This isn't about living like a monk or depriving yourself of everything good in life. It's about being intentional with your money so that every dollar you spend is moving you toward the life you actually want, instead of the life Instagram told you to want. When you have this clarity, financial decisions become simple. You spend aggressively on the things that align with your values, and you cut ruthlessly on everything else. The second goal is going to make some of you uncomfortable, but it's non-negotiable. You need to have zero debt, except for your mortgage, by the time you turn 40. I can already hear the objections. But, Nick, what about good debt versus bad debt? What about leveraging other people's money? What about building credit? Listen, I'm not here to debate the theoretical benefits of debt. I'm here to tell you what separates people who thrive in their 40s from people who struggle. Here's what happens when you hit 40 with debt still hanging around your neck. Life starts throwing curveballs at you from every direction. Your career demands more responsibility just as your family needs more of your time and attention. Your parents start needing help just as your kids get expensive. In this environment, debt isn't just a monthly payment, it's a psychological anchor that limits your options and amplifies every source of stress in your life. Think of debt like that friend who's fun to hang out with occasionally, but becomes toxic when they move into your house. Debt serves a purpose in our economy. It allows people to buy homes and start businesses, but when you accept debt as a permanent fixture in your life, when you start thinking in terms of monthly payments instead of total cost, you've invited a vampire into your home that will slowly drain your financial life force. The math on this is unforgiving. Let's say you're carrying $20,000 in credit card debt at 18% interest. If you only make minimum payments, you'll spend over 30 years paying it off and shell out more than $40,000 in interest alone. That's 40 grand. That could have been invested, could have bought you freedom, could have given you options. Instead, it went to a bank as a penalty for past decisions. The third goal is going to bruise some egos, but your credit score needs to hit 800 or higher before you blow out those 40 candles. I know what you're thinking. Nick, didn't you just tell me to avoid debt like it's a communicable disease? Yes, and I stand by that. But here's the thing about living in modern society. Unless you've got $500,000 in cash stuffed under your mattress, you're going to need to borrow money at some point. And when that day comes, you better make sure you're getting the best possible deal. Credit scores are like golf scores, except in reverse. Lower is not better. The difference between a 650 credit score and an 800 credit score isn't just bragging rights at dinner parties. It's the difference between financial freedom and financial servitude. On a $500,000 mortgage, the gap between a 3% interest rate and a 4% interest rate will cost you nearly $100,000 over the life of the loan. Read that again. $100,000, that's not pocket change. That's a Tesla, a down payment on another house, or 4 years of college tuition. By the time you hit 40, you've had enough time to build a credit history that doesn't look like a financial crime scene. You've had credit cards long enough that the length of your credit history isn't working against you. You've hopefully learned not to max out your cards or miss payments. Building an 800 credit score isn't rocket science. but it requires consistency and patience, two qualities that separate adults from overgrown teenagers. The fourth goal is your financial life jacket, and it's probably the least sexy thing we'll talk about today. You need a solid emergency fund sitting in cold, hard cash, not invested in stocks, not tied up in crypto, not loaned to your brother-in-law for his sure thing business venture. Cash in a boring savings account where it earns basically nothing but remains instantly accessible. Here's why this matters more at 40 than it did at 25. When you're young and single, you can adapt to financial emergencies with the flexibility of a yoga instructor. Your car breaks down, you can take the bus for a few months, you lose your job. You can crash on a friend's couch and eat ramen until you find something new. You need money for an opportunity, you can pick up extra shifts or sell your stuff. But when you hit 40 with a family, a mortgage, and responsibilities coming at you from every angle, you don't have that luxury anymore. You can't tell your spouse and kids that you're all going to live on rice and beans for the next 6 months because daddy made some poor financial choices. You can't just disappear for 3 months to figure things out. You need stability, and cash provides that stability. The rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months of expenses, but honestly, in today's economy, I lean toward the higher end. 6 months gives you breathing room to make good decisions instead of desperate ones. It lets you wait for the right job instead of taking the first offer. It turns emergencies into inconveniences instead of life-altering disasters. Think of your emergency fund as bowling lane bumpers. You might not need them most of the time, but when life throws you a curveball, they keep you from ending up in the gutter. Sorry, and here's the secret benefit nobody talks about. Emergency funds give you what some people call FU money. Not because you're planning to tell off your boss, but because having cash reserves gives you options. Options are freedom, and freedom is what we're really building toward. The fifth goal is where things get interesting, and it's the one that separates people who work forever from people who have choices. You need at least 5 times your annual expenses invested in the market by age 40. This isn't about getting rich quick or beating the market with some genius stock picking strategy. This is about harnessing the most powerful force in the universe, compound interest. Here's the magic of hitting this target. If you have 5 times your annual expenses invested by 40 and you never add another dime to those investments, compound growth alone will likely give you enough money to retire comfortably by 65. 25 years of compound growth can turn $500,000 into over $3 million at an 8% return. That's not speculation, that's math. This goal is what financial independence nerds call coast fire. You've reached the point where you can coast to traditional retirement age without stress because the heavy lifting is already done. Your money is working harder than you are. But more importantly, it gives you options in your 40s and 50s. Want to take a lower paying job you actually enjoy? Go for it. Want to take a few years off to raise kids or care for aging parents? The math works. Want to start that business you've been dreaming about? You've got a financial cushion that makes risk-taking possible. The beauty of index funds like total stock market funds is that they remove the guesswork. You're not trying to pick winners or time the market. You're simply buying a piece of American capitalism and letting it grow. It's boring, it's predictable, and it works. While everyone else is chasing hot stock tips and cryptocurrency moonshots, you're building real wealth the old-fashioned way. Goal number 6 shifts away from money and focuses on something equally important: your career capital. This is the collection of skills, relationships, and expertise that makes you valuable in the marketplace. Your 20s are for exploration, but your 30s need to be about building something substantial that you can leverage in your 40s. Career capital isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder or getting fancy titles. It's about becoming so good at what you do that people can't ignore you. Whether you're an accountant, a teacher, a plumber, or an entrepreneur, the goal is to develop skills that are both rare and valuable. This gives you leverage to negotiate higher salaries, better working conditions, or the flexibility to pursue opportunities that align with your values. I've watched too many people hit 40 still in exploration mode, jumping from career to career, going back to school repeatedly, never really building expertise in anything. Meanwhile, life is demanding more from them financially, just as they're least prepared to deliver. Your 40s will bring responsibilities and expenses that require financial horsepower, and career capital is how you generate that horsepower. The seventh goal might surprise you because it's not directly about money, but it absolutely impacts your financial future. You need to develop a solid fitness routine that's appropriate for your age. Before you click away thinking this is some motivational fitness content, stay with me. Fitness and finance are more connected than most people realize. Your body is the machine that generates your income. If that machine breaks down, everything else we've talked about becomes irrelevant. Poor health leads to higher medical costs, reduced earning capacity, and a lower quality of life that no amount of money can fix. All right, but here's the thing. Fitness at 35 isn't the same as fitness at 22. You can't train like you're still in college and expect your body to cooperate. Smart fitness at this stage is about injury prevention, sustainable energy, and long-term functionality. It's about being able to play with your kids without throwing out your back. It's about having the energy to excel at work and still have something left for your family. It's about avoiding the cascade of health problems that can derail even the best financial plans. I'm not talking about becoming a fitness influencer or training for the Olympics. I'm talking about treating your body like the valuable asset it is and maintaining it accordingly. This means cutting out most processed foods, developing a workout routine focused on mobility and strength rather than ego, and accepting that your metabolism isn't what it used to be. Goal number 8 is the stuff nobody wants to think about until it's too late. But ignoring it is like driving without car insurance while texting. You need to get your estate planning and life insurance sorted out before you hit the big 40. I know. Nothing says fun Saturday afternoon like contemplating your own mortality and filling out legal documents. But here's the thing. Hey, if you have people who depend on you financially, this isn't optional. It's adulting at its most adult. Let's talk life insurance first because the math is simple and brutal. If something happens to you tomorrow, how long could your family maintain their current lifestyle without your income? A week? A month? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, you need term life insurance. Not the complicated whole life garbage that insurance salespeople will try to peddle. Just plain boring term life insurance that pays out if you die and costs almost nothing while you're alive. The rule of thumb is 10 to 12 times your annual expenses and coverage. So if your family spends $60,000 a year to live, you need $600,000 to $720,000 in coverage. Sounds like a lot until you realize that for a healthy 35-year-old, this might cost less than your monthly Netflix and Spotify subscriptions combined. It's probably the best financial deal you'll ever find, which is exactly why insurance companies hate selling it. Estate planning is the other half of this equation, and it's not just for rich people with summer homes in the Hamptons. If you have assets, beneficiaries, or strong opinions about what happens to your stuff when you're gone, you need legal documents. Without them, your loved ones get to play a fun game called probate court, which is like regular court except slower, more expensive, and designed to make everyone involved question their life choices. A basic estate plan includes a will, power of attorney documents, and maybe a trust if your situation is complex enough. The goal is to make things as easy as possible for the people you leave behind during what's already going to be the worst time of their lives. Think of it as your final act of consideration, except hopefully it won't be needed for decades. The ninth and final goal is the most uncomfortable conversation you'll probably have this decade, but it could save your financial future. You need to start talking to your aging parents about money. There's something called the 70-40 rule. When a parent hits 70 or a child hits 40, it's time to have the talk. Not the birds and bees talk, obviously, the money talk. Look, these 9 goals aren't magic bullets that guarantee financial bliss at 40. They're the minimum entry fee for having options instead of just obligations. You can ignore them and hope everything works out, but hope isn't a strategy, it's a lottery ticket. The difference between financial freedom and financial prison isn't luck or timing. It's making these decisions while you still have time for compound interest to work its magic. Your 40-year-old self is watching. Don't let them down.